President Trump releases the JFK Files. Karoline Leavitt lays a smackdown on some Rudy Poo candy-ass reporters. All this and more on this episode of the Vasquez Report, and it happens right now. The JFK Files have been released, and so far there have been many revelations about these different occurrences and who was involved and what the operation names were called and who was responsible for the death of John F. Kennedy. This is a little like piecing together of the beginning parts of it so far. Let's check it out.
It has been 2 hours since the JFK files were released. Here's everything you need to know. CIA was watching Oswald before the assassination. And a man named Gary Underhill, who was connected to the CIA, fled Washington after he said that a small CIA clique was responsible. And 6 months later, he was unalived and they said he took his own life. Where have we heard that story before? Hours before Oswald was unalived, the FBI got an anonymous tip telling them that you should protect Oswald because the same thing's gonna happen to Oswald that happened to JFK, and it's gonna be done by the same group. Despite that, no extra security was taken for Oswald, and he was unalived hours later. CIA memo says that a source told investigators that Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald met at a nightclub weeks before JFK's assassination. One that knew Ruby for years came forward and said that Ruby said he had to unalive Oswald, that there was a bigger picture, he was under a lot of pressure, and he was worried about the safety for his family. The KGB deputy director said that Oswald was never a KGB agent. The Soviets were afraid that the JFK assassination would allow the United States to create an extremist plot to start World War III. Documents exposed that the CIA had 34 secret bases around the world. In Africa, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. At the time, the Italian press blamed the CIA. The FBI ordered surveillance on Oswald's whole family, including his wife, fearing she could become a public voice questioning the official story. There are over 80,000 pages, and this is just part.
Another interesting occurrence that happened during the unveiling of the JFK files was John F. Jr. calling Joe Biden a traitor in 1994. JFK Jr. didn't die until 1999, so having a letter that began with calling Joe Biden a traitor, I wonder what information he knew that would lead him to call him that. Let me know your thoughts. There's a funny video posted on X about Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, trolling a low-level French official who, surfaced the idea of them taking back the Statue of Liberty as a gift. Let's see how she feels about it in this clip.
Is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now.
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt is discussing the Autopen scandal with CNN. Apparently, they both have a back and forth, and she puts it in her place. Check this out.
The president was begging the question that I think a lot of journalists in this room should be asking about whether or not the former president of the United States, who I think we can all finally agree was cognitively impaired. I know it took people some time to finally admit that, but we all know that to be true, as evidenced by his disastrous debate performance against President Trump during the campaign. I digress on that. But the president was raising the point that did the president even know about these pardons? Was his legal signature used without his consent or knowledge? And that's not just the president or me raising those questions, Caitlin. According to the New York Post, there are Biden officials from the previous White House who raised those questions and wondered if the president was even consulted about his legally binding signature being signed onto documents. And so I think it's a question that everybody in this room should be looking into, because certainly that would propose perhaps criminal or illegal behavior if staff members were signing the President of the United States autograph without his consent.
Biden is on the record talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out.
Well, that went left pretty quickly. Senior advisor Stephen Miller gave Andrew Weissman, former FBI general counsel, a piece of his mind about a plane full of dangerous criminals be turned around and be put back into the United States after it was heading towards El Salvador to house these dangerous criminals. You won't want to miss this. Check this out.
But let me play this first from somebody who I know is not a favorite of President Trump. This is Andrew Weissman, who's a former top Mueller prosecutor. Of course, it's not a huge surprise that he didn't like this operation. He doesn't think it's legal under the act that you just mentioned, Stephen. Watch.
We're not at war with Venezuela. We're not at war with the gang that is the subject of the executive order. There is no invasion that is going on. And you also have to show that the people you're removing are actually part of that gang, even if there were an invasion or a war. And this statute may, in fact, be very unconstitutional.
So the judge has to be convinced that these individuals aren't real. I mean, it's a huge group, and nobody's going to miss any of these people, but they're quantifiable. So can you prove that these individuals were linked with Tren de Aragua and that Tren de Aragua is part of a Maduro operation, Stephen?
So first of all, Andrew Weissman is an absolute moron. He is a moron, and he is a fool, and he's a degenerate. Andrew Weissman has devoted his career to putting innocent Americans in jail, taking away their civil liberties. He was involved in the Mueller coup against a democratically elected President Donald J. Trump. Weissman should never be on TV anywhere. He should hang his head in eternal shame for what he's done to this country. And now he's up there shilling for people who rape and murder Americans. That's who Andrew Weissman is. I met the mother of Jocelyn Nungary, Alexis Nungary, who President Trump honored at the State of the Union, named a national wildlife refuge after her daughter. Tren de Aragua terrorists took that 12-year-old angel and they tortured her to death. They sexually assaulted her. They stripped her and they dumped her body in a river. That's who President Trump has deported from this country. Behind every single one of those terrorists was another future rape victim, another future sex trafficking victim, another future murder victim. And most importantly, every one of those people was here illegally. They have no right to be in this country for 1 second longer. They are illegal aliens, they are foreign terrorists, they are alien enemies. And the law at the heart of this issue was signed in the founding generation of this country, the same generation that wrote our Constitution. People say, oh, it's an 18th century law. You know what else is an 18th century law? The Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights of the United States. The founding generation gave us this law, gave President Trump this law to repel this invasion from our country.
I mean,
and it was all detailed in the proclamation, how this gang was sent here by a foreign government, and President Trump is sending them out of this country.
Well, we look forward to learning.
I love the fire, bro. That was amazing. He definitely cares about the country, and being a senior advisor to President Trump in his first term and then coming back and doing that very thing again, he's a staunch advocate for America First and the Make America Great Again movement, and also just teaches people civic lessons left and right. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and if you find value in my videos, please buy us a cup of coffee. We would really appreciate it. It's been a wild ride for Crew 9, being stuck in the International Space Station, but thanks to Elon Musk and President Trump, they were able to safely return back to Earth after being stranded up there for 300 days. It's been a wild, maybe it was politically motivated. He stayed in on Joe Rogan as much. Let's take a look at what Elon Musk had to say about Crew 9 being stranded in space on Joe Rogan right here.
Are you still rescuing those people that are stuck in the space station?
Yeah, that's coming up in a couple of weeks, I think.
Whoa.
They were supposed to be up there for like 8 days.
Yeah.
And they've been up there for like, I think, 8 months. So a little longer than expected.
Fuck.
It ended up being like this political football and sort of hotly contested topic. We offered to bring them back early. This offer was rejected by the Biden administration.
Why?
For political reasons.
That's so crazy.
There's no way that they're going to make anyone who's supporting Trump look good.
Wow.
They can only get them back with a SpaceX spacecraft, but they pushed the return date past the inauguration date. the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft is the only one that is considered safe enough to bring them back. So NASA concluded that the Boeing spacecraft was not safe. So that's why they're stuck there.
It's just disgusting that they would use that as a political tool.
Yeah. So people like say like, oh, Elon's making it up. The Biden administration wasn't against SpaceX. I'm like, bro, the Department of Justice had a massive lawsuit against SpaceX for not hiring asylum seekers, even though it is illegal for us to hire anyone who is not a permanent resident. There's a law that says you have to hire asylum seekers, but there's also a law that says anyone hired by a rocket company, which is an advanced weapons technology, must be a permanent resident. And an asylum seeker is not a permanent resident. So it is both legal and illegal to hire asylum seekers. So why would the Biden administration launch a massive lawsuit? Again, this is public information. It's not like my imagination. Why would they do such a massive lawsuit against SpaceX? They're extremely antagonistic.
Okay, now let's get into all the other good stuff. Let's see Crew 9 enter Earth's atmosphere, splash down, and then finally exit the rocket after returning safely to Earth.
As you can see there on your screen, continuing to monitor progress of the Dragon spacecraft. And we're going to stand by for splashdown, located in the Gulf of America, off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
Dragon had an on-time splashdown. Looks like we're getting our next crew member here. That is none other than Sunny Williams. Big smile, big waves. She, like her other crew members.
There we have it, some waves, some thumbs up, and some smiles. We're getting some views of him now as he egresses or exits the spacecraft.
Once again, some elation and cheers there from Butch Wilmore. As we mentioned before, returning to Earth coming from a microgravity environment can wreak havoc on the body. So it is customary and just standard procedure for all of our long-term space residents to get assistance once they are back on board the recovery vessel.
That's it for the Vasquez Report. I'm Angel. See you next time.